I remember the day she slid the envelope across the table like it was nothing, just another transaction. The cool leather of her office, the ticking of the antique clock behind her desk, and the way she didn't look me in the eye, it all felt scripted. Like this wasn't our life unraveling, but just another deal in her endless empire. "Sign it," she said, her tone flat, too practiced. "There's a non-disclosure clause. You take the money, you walk away. You don't speak about us, about me, us, me." Like those were things she could file away in a cabinet. Her name was Arya Verma, CEO of Vermatech, youngest self-made female billionaire in the city. The media worshipped her, called her fierce, brilliant, untouchable. I once thought I was the lucky guy in the room, the one who somehow captured her heart. But it turns out I was just the accessory to her success. The quiet husband, the side story. And me? I was Ayan, a freelance writer, mostly ghost-written stuff for CEOs who didn't know how to tell their own stories. Funny how that worked out. "You think this will shut me up?" I asked, more out of curiosity than rebellion. She flinched, barely. But I caught it. "You want more?" she replied, sliding another paper over. "We can increase the amount, but you disappear. No interviews, no posts, no drama." The amount was ridiculous, life-changing. It was hush money, and I knew it. But I also knew Arya. She was hiding something much bigger than just a divorce. That's the thing with people who build empires. They always think they're in control of every narrative. But Arya forgot I was the one who helped her polish hers. I knew how her story was built, and what she'd buried to make it perfect. So I signed, smiled, thanked her, and walked out of that glass tower with nothing but a suitcase, a bank transfer, and a burning curiosity. 3 weeks passed. She didn't reach out, didn't ask where I went, and neither did I. But headlines started shifting, whispers, rumors. One of her top execs vanished. Then an anonymous expose hinted at internal fraud linked to her acquisition deals 2 years ago. I watched it unfold quietly from a small apartment near the old harbor, rented under a fake name. No social media, no connections, just a laptop, a coffee machine, and memories. That's when I started writing again. Not ghostwriting, not corporate PR. Real writing, about a woman who rose to the top by burying the people who built her, about the intern she manipulated into taking a fall for her embezzlement, about the competitor whose secrets she bought, and whose company mysteriously collapsed after a certain board meeting. Fiction, of course, legally safe. But Arya would know. Oh, she'd know. The stories went viral. Not overnight, but enough to stir curiosity. Enough that even her most loyal shareholders started questioning things. One night I got a message from an old acquaintance, Ria, a tech journalist I used to work with before Arya and I became public. It was just 3 words. "Is this you? I rhyme." Didn't reply. The next morning she called me. "They're circling her like sharks," she said. "Whatever you started, it's working. But Ayan, she's not the type to let someone ruin her from the shadows. You sure you're ready for this?" I wasn't, but I didn't care. Arya thought she bought my silence. What she didn't realize was silence is dangerous when it starts to speak through stories. 2 days after Ria's call, my name started showing up in places it shouldn't. Not directly, just little hints. A former spouse mentioned in an anonymous blog post. A podcast episode that theorized the viral fictional stories were actually true accounts. And then there was the phone call I knew would come eventually. Blocked number. Midday. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. You really think you can destroy me with bedtime stories? Arya's voice. Cold, controlled, but not as calm as she wanted it to be. I'm not destroying you, I replied, sipping my coffee. I'm just telling stories. Your NDA doesn't allow you to break it. I didn't. Everything I wrote is fictional. Any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental, right? She went quiet for a moment. I could practically hear her grinding her teeth. You're playing a stupid game, Ion. And you're scared I might win. I ended the call before she could respond. That was the first real moment I felt power shift. Arya always had control. When we were married, when she wanted to keep our relationship private, when she convinced me to stay in the background for the sake of her image, it was always her way. She could manipulate boardrooms and media like a puppet master. But now someone else was holding the strings. That night, I checked the analytics of my latest post. Over 1 million reads, thousands of shares, comments flooding in. People were connecting the dots. They remembered the intern, the failed acquisition, the whistleblower who disappeared. Suddenly, it wasn't fiction anymore. It was suspicion. Got a message from Raya again. She's launching a PR war. Legal teams, press releases, the whole 9 yards. She's calling you unstable, bitter, delusional. She wants to discredit you before things get worse. Typical Arya. Kill the voice, not the truth. So I wrote again. This time, I told a story about a husband who was erased. Not just from the company, but from the narrative. About how the CEO wife painted him as a failure to maintain her solo success image. About the times she twisted facts, manipulated staff, and emotionally drained anyone close to her. The internet exploded. People started digging into her old interviews, noticing contradictions. Someone even unearthed an internal email leak from Vermatech, one that hinted at silencing a key employee before a major merger. Arya issued a public denial, but the stain had already spread. And then came the headline that changed everything. Anonymous blogger accuses Vermatech CEO of corporate sabotage. Ex-husband involved? Now I was no longer invisible. My inbox blew up. Journalists, lawyers, even book agents wanted to talk, but I didn't respond. Not yet. This wasn't about fame. It was about making her feel what she made me feel. Irrelevant, replaceable, disposable. A week later, I walked into a bookstore just to clear my head. And there it was, on a magazine cover by the checkout aisle. Arya Verma, from Tech Queen. To Scandal Icon, the secrets behind the silence. Her face, bold and glossy, now surrounded by controversy instead of praise. I didn't smile. Not yet. Because I knew Arya. She wasn't the type to lose. She was the type to burn down the battlefield if she couldn't win on it, and sure enough, that night, someone broke into my apartment. They didn't take anything. Just trashed the place. Papers torn, laptop smashed, desk overturned, message received. But Arya made one mistake. She assumed I'd be scared. Instead, I grabbed the notebook I kept hidden behind the kitchen panel. The one with real names, real dates, real documents I never published, and I made a call of my own. "Rhea," I said when she picked up, "I'm ready to go public." The interview was set for Thursday night. Prime time, live, no edits. Rhea had pulled every string she had. It wasn't just a blog post or a whisper now. It was national television. My face, my voice, my version. "You know, once you go on air, there's no going back," she warned me before we started. "Arya, we'll either bury you in lawsuits or something worse." I nodded. "Let her try. I've already lost everything she could take." Rhea looked at me for a long second, then hit record. The interviewer was polite at first, smiling, soft questions. My journey, my perspective, my healing. But that wasn't what I came for. "I was silenced," I said plainly. "Not just by a contract, but by shame, by power imbalance, by the idea that a woman that successful couldn't possibly be manipulative, abusive, or dishonest." There was a pause. The audience, the cameraman, even the host, everyone froze. "A little," I continued. "When I met Arya, she was magnetic. She made you feel like you were part of something historic. But what people don't see is the blood behind the gold, the betrayals, the destruction of anyone who knew too much or asked too many questions." I talked about the intern, the fake, audit, the merger deal where Arya leaked false data to crash her competitors' stock before buying them out. She told me to stay quiet, paid me to leave, and now she's paying the price. By the time I finished, the studio was dead silent, and then the internet exploded. Arya Exposed started trending within an hour. Bloggers pulled receipts, ex-employees came forward, anonymous sources confirmed timelines. Arya's PR team released a cold, perfectly written denial, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. That night, I stayed at a hotel just in case. Rhea insisted. She said Arya wouldn't stop now, she'd retaliate. But I didn't expect how fast. The next morning, a video leaked. Grainy CCTV footage. Me in a bar, talking to someone. The caption: "Disgruntled ex-husband seen conspiring with Arya's rival CEO before launching attack campaign." It was garbage, completely fake, but it spread like wildfire. Arya's side was pushing hard now, framing me as a bitter loser working for her enemies. She underestimated me again. Rhea released the hard evidence we had: emails, contracts, photos, a voice memo of Arya herself threatening to erase someone who got too close to the truth. It hit harder than I expected. Within 48 hours, Vermitex stock dropped by 27%. Board members held emergency meetings. An internal investigation was launched. Arya skipped her keynote speech at a global summit, and then she called me again. This time, no threats. Just silence at first. Then softly, "Was I really that awful? To you?" That hit harder than any PR war, because part of me still remembered her laugh, the way she used to bring me coffee when I stayed up writing, the nights we'd talk about changing the world, but I also remembered the way she made me feel. Invisible. "You weren't awful," I said. "You were powerful and careless, and you thought I'd stay small forever." I hung up. She didn't call back. That night, I opened my inbox, hundreds of messages, but one stood out. It was from a man named Samar, a former CFO at one of Arya's acquired companies. He'd disappeared after the merger. People said he moved abroad, took a payoff, but his message was just 5 words. I have the missing piece. Samar's message hit me like a cold gust through an open window. He hadn't been seen in 2 years. Arya made sure of that. His exit was painted as amicable, a mutual decision during restructuring, but the truth had always been messier. I replied instantly, "Where can we meet?" He sent back an address in Goa. Quiet, remote, safe. I booked the first flight. Rhea insisted on coming with me. If he has what we think he has, you're not just telling a story anymore, Ayan. You're holding a match to a corporate gas tank. We met him in a dim beachside cafe. He looked older than his photos. Eyes tired, skin a shade paler, like he hadn't been in the sun for months. But when he saw me, he didn't smile. He just nodded like we were soldiers meeting after surviving, a war neither of us wanted to fight. I kept my mouth shut for 2 years, he said quietly, sliding over a flash drive. But watching her on the news, playing the victim again, I couldn't. What is it? I asked. He tapped the drive. The real books, not the fake ledgers she gave the auditors. These are the ones she kept hidden. Offshore accounts, shadow payoffs, and proof she used insider info to manipulate stock prices before 3 major acquisitions. Rhea's eyes widened. This is prison-level stuff. She always said, Samar muttered, power isn't about playing clean. It's about not getting caught. We flew back that same night. I barely slept. My mind raced with everything Samar told us. How Arya had planted false evidence on employees to deflect blame. How she silenced a whistleblower by threatening their family. How she used me, her own husband, as a shield while she built a billion-dollar house of cards. The next morning, Rhea and I uploaded the documents to a secure drive. She contacted 3 journalists, all known for taking down corporate giants. We prepared the full story, with names, with dates, with irrefutable proof, but Arya wasn't sitting idle. Just before we were ready to go public, I got a call from my bank. Mr. Ayan, we're seeing unusual activity on your account. Multiple international withdrawal attempts. Someone tried to reroute your funds to a Cayman Islands account. It didn't take a genius to figure out who was behind it. She was trying to erase me. Again. Rhea's voice shook when I told her. This isn't damage control anymore. This is war. I nodded. Then let's end it. We leaked the story. Within hours, it hit every major news platform. Leaked financial records expose Vermatech CEO Arya Verma in massive corporate fraud scandal. Her world cracked open like a dropped wine glass. Government agencies launched investigations. Shareholders filed lawsuits. Her company's value plummeted overnight. I turned on the news and saw her face, not airbrushed and glowing like before, but hard, worn, cornered. She held a press conference. I trusted people who betrayed me, she said, voice calm but breaking. This is a coordinated attack, driven by bitterness and revenge. It was the first time she said my name publicly. Ayan Malhotra, my ex-husband. A man I supported, loved, and protected, now trying to destroy everything I built. I watched. In silence, Rhea turned to me. She's still trying to frame herself as the victim. I shook my head. Let her. The truth is already out. This time, no money can buy it back. But I knew Arya too well to believe this was her end. She wasn't the type to surrender, not yet. So when I got the message that night, I wasn't surprised. Meet me. One last time. Just you. No press, no cameras, just the truth. It was from Arya, and she wasn't asking. The address she sent was familiar. Too familiar. It was the same private villa we used to escape to during our first year of marriage, before the boardrooms, before the headlines, before the lies. Back when Arya used to laugh freely, and I still believed in us. I didn't tell. Raya, I was going. She would have insisted on coming or tried to stop me altogether. But this wasn't about evidence anymore. It wasn't about articles or scandals. It was about closure. I arrived just past midnight. The sea whispered in the background, and the wind carried that strange coastal silence that always made you feel like the world had paused for a second. The lights were dim, and Arya was already inside, sitting alone at the same patio table, where she once told me she loved me. No security, no lawyers, just her. She didn't look like the woman from the press conference. No makeup, no diamond wristwatch, no armor of arrogance, just tired eyes and a bottle of wine, half empty. You came, she said softly, not looking up. I had to. She gestured to the chair across from her. I sat. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, heavy with all the unsaid things. Then she broke it. Do you hate me, Ayan? I blinked. Of all the things she could have asked, that one caught me off guard. I did, I admitted. For a long time. But now, I don't know. I think I just stopped expecting anything from you. She looked down at her glass. You were always better than me. I laughed bitterly. That's not how the world saw it. Well, the world's an idiot, she muttered, her voice cracking a little. Another pause. Then she leaned back, staring at the ceiling like she was trying to remember something from a different lifetime. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said. The lies, the money, the silence. At first it was just survival. I was a woman in a man's world, Ayan. I had to be ruthless. I had to choose power or nothing. So you chose power, I said, even if it meant stepping on the people who gave you love. She flinched. I loved you, she said quietly. In my own way. That's the problem, Arya, I replied. Your way of loving came with conditions, rules, contracts. You didn't want a partner. You wanted someone who'd never outshine you. That's not true. It is, I cut her off. You controlled everything, my career, my silence, even the way I smiled in public, and when I stopped playing along, you paid me to disappear. Her hands trembled as she poured more wine. I thought I was protecting you, she whispered. From the media, from the pressure, from me. I leaned forward. No, you were protecting your image. You buried your secrets with NDAs and checks. But you forgot something. What? That I remember you. The real you, and that version of you. She wouldn't have let it get this far. She looked up at me then, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a flicker of the woman I fell in love with. Broken, flawed, human. I'm going to lose everything, she said. The company, the board, my reputation. I nodded slowly. Then maybe it's time you find out who you are without all that. A long silence followed. Then, without a word, she reached into her coat and placed a small envelope on the table. What's this? I asked. Proof, she said, of what you don't know yet. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside were photos, documents, a birth certificate, a name. I froze. You kept this from me? She nodded, tears in her eyes. I had to. If the media found out, if the board knew, I would have lost control. I stared at her, heart pounding. You mean I have a daughter? Arya's voice broke. Yes. The air in that moment became too thick to breathe. My fingers gripped the envelope like it might slip through reality if I let go. A daughter. My daughter. I looked up at Arya, my voice low, shaky. How old is she? She turned 4 last month, she said, barely able to meet my eyes. Her name is Tara. 4 years. That meant Arya had been pregnant right around the time our marriage was crumbling, when she pushed me out, when she made the decision to erase me from her narrative. She hadn't just removed me from her company or her life. She had removed me from my own child's existence. I stood up. I couldn't sit there anymore. My chest felt like it was caving in. You lied to me for 4 years? I said, my voice louder than I meant. You let me believe I was completely erased, disposable, irrelevant, and all this time you were raising my daughter? I didn't. Raise her, she said quickly. She's with my sister, in Delhi. I visit when I can, but I've barely been in her life. I thought I was protecting you both. Don't give me that, I snapped. You weren't protecting anyone but yourself. You made a choice, Arya. You chose control over connection. You thought you could manage a life like a business, cut what doesn't serve the brand. Her hands were shaking now. I was scared, Ayan. You were already drifting. The media was circling us like vultures. The board was threatening my position. If they knew I was pregnant, if they thought I was weak, then let them, I said, sharply. Let them think whatever the hell they want. But you don't get to erase a father from his child's life to protect your corporate seat. She was crying now. Not performative tears, real silent ones, and I hated that part of me still hurt seeing her like that. She looks like you, she whispered. Same eyes, same smile when she's stubborn. I sat back down slowly. My legs felt numb. My heart was doing some awful stuttering thing. I thought I'd won. I thought I'd burned her empire to the ground. But I didn't realize what I was really burning was a part of me I never knew existed. Why now? I asked, voice soft. Why tell me now after everything? Because it's over, she said. The board is voting next week. The lawsuits are piling up. I'll probably be forced out. And for the first time in years, I stopped lying to myself. You deserve to know her. She deserves to know you. I stared at her, at this woman who'd broken me and built herself from my silence. And now, she was the one falling apart. You don't deserve forgiveness, I said quietly. But maybe Tara deserves the truth. And a father. Arya nodded. I know. Another silence. This one's softer, sadder. I'm not asking you to. Fix this, she added. Just don't let her grow up thinking you didn't care. I picked up the envelope again. My hands felt steady now, my voice clearer. I need time, but I'll meet her. Arya exhaled, relief and grief tangled into one breath. We left that night without another word. No goodbye, no promise. Just a quiet understanding that something deeper than revenge had taken root. The past was broken, yes, but maybe the future didn't have to be. When I got back to the hotel, Rhea was waiting outside my room, eyes wide with panic. Where were you? She disappeared from her building. You weren't answering your phone. I thought she... I raised my hand gently. It's okay. She didn't try anything. What happened? I looked at her, and for the first time in weeks I didn't feel rage. She gave me something I didn't expect. What? A reason to stop hating her. The small house in Delhi wasn't what I expected. Simple. Quiet. A faded yellow gate. A few potted plants. Wind chimes dancing lazily in the breeze. Nothing like the sterile glass towers Arya used to live in. This place felt like it belonged to someone human. Arya's sister Mira greeted me at the door with cautious eyes and polite distance. She doesn't know you're her father, she said. Arya didn't give me that choice. I nodded. I don't want to confuse her. I just want to meet her, sit with her, be near her. She led me inside, into a small sunlit living room where Tara was sprawled across the floor with her crayons. Her hair was tied in two messy pigtails, her fingers stained with pink and blue wax, and when she looked up at me, something inside me broke in a way I couldn't explain. She didn't say anything, just stared. I smiled gently. Hi. She blinked, then tilted her head. Are you Mira Auntie's friend? I glanced at Mira, who nodded. Yeah, I said. Just a friend. Tara offered me a crayon. You can color, but don't mess up the sky. I sat down cross-legged beside her, heart thudding in my chest. And just like that, I started coloring. Her world was so small, so beautifully untouched by the chaos outside. And in that moment, I didn't feel like Ayan, the ex-husband, the whistleblower, the man who brought down an empire. I just felt like a man who missed 4 years of sunsets with the little girl drawing. Skies beside him. I stayed for 3 hours. We colored, played. She told me a story about a talking elephant who ate too much cake. When I left, she waved without knowing what it meant to me. Mira walked me out. She's smart, she said, and a little stubborn, just like Arya, but she's warm. That's you. I smiled. I'll come again, if that's okay. She'd like that. Back in Mumbai, the headlines had shifted again. Arya Verma resigns as Vermatech CEO amid scandal. She was gone from the company. Replaced. Investigations still ongoing. Some of her board members flipped to save themselves. Others distanced entirely. It was over. Not just for her, but for the version of her that ruled like a queen behind. Tinted glass. I didn't speak to her again, not after the villa. But a few days later, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a small photo album, me and Arya. From the beginning, the wedding, our first anniversary, a trip to Japan we never told anyone about, her hospital bracelet from the day Tara was born, and one note, handwritten in shaky ink. You were always the better story. I don't know if it was apology or surrender, maybe both. Months passed. I didn't publish anything else. No more blog posts, no exposés. I said what I needed to say. The world didn't need more noise. It needed healing. And so did I. Rhea got a book deal from the whole saga. She tried to give me half the credit. I declined. This wasn't about fame, I told her. It was about being heard. Tara started, recognizing me, slowly, shyly, first as a family friend, then someone who came often, then someone she asked for when she couldn't sleep. It's strange how time doesn't fix things, but it gives them space to breathe. Sometimes I still dream of Arya. Not the CEO, not the enemy. Just the girl I met in a bookstore once arguing with a cashier about why business books are boring. The girl who made me believe ambition and love could exist in the same room. She was wrong. But maybe she wanted to be right. The last thing she ever sent me was a birthday card for Tara. No message. Just her name, scribbled on the bottom with a tiny sticker that said, "Sorry." I never responded, but I didn't throw it away either. Because some stories don't end with villains and heroes, they end with silence. And sometimes that's enough.